welcome back to Talking Dragon Age, the show where I talk about Dragon Age. Today we're talking about the Qunari and their plans to invade Thedas. One thing I like is that throughout all three games, the Qunari have made no secret of the fact that they fully intend to invade Thedas again. And in Trespasser, we see kind of maybe the beginning of that. The Vitasala claimed the decision to finally invade Thedas was made when the breach opened, since it was clear the South could not handle magic. However, the Qunari officially disavow the Vitasala's actions. Now, of course they would do that, but there is some evidence that supports that claim. The main one being the insane plan to give Cerebos Lyrium.
That's a load of crap. There's no way the Vitasala would let any Cerebos within 1,000 feet of Lyrium.
I'll talk about that again in a minute. Regardless of whether the Vitasala's actions were sanctioned or not, the Qunari did return their focus to invading Tevinter, as Solus predicted. This is shown in the comic book Deception, where they begin to invade Carinas, which has annoyingly been renamed to Ventus, since apparently people kept getting Carinas confused with Qunari. In-world, that actually kind of makes sense for Tevinter to do that. I hope in the next game people still say Carinas and then correct themselves. Make it more real, you know? Anyway, the Qunari plot. It's no longer just skirmishes on Saharan. It is now full-scale war in Tevinter. But the Vitasala's original plan was to use the Alluvian network to infiltrate the south, after blowing up the Exalted Council, which would have seen the Divine and a huge number of important nobles from all over Thedas killed. That then would have thrown the south into chaos, which would have made the Qunari's invasion easier. By using the Alluvian network, the Qunari could have gotten pretty much anywhere, leaving everyone unsure where they were coming from. Without the network, they are forced to transport their soldiers on ships. While the Qunari obviously have naval superiority, the Fel'Ishisma Armada has the numbers to give them pause, as they did when the Qunari invaded 300 years back. Speaking of numbers, that was one of the biggest reasons the Qunari didn't win the first time around. While the Qunari had many advantages, the South greatly outnumbered them, which put them on about even ground. The real thing that turned the tide against them were the mages. The Qunari just couldn't compete. The South's magic and their numbers are the biggest reasons the Qunari didn't win. And Garahel changing the timeline, of course, but, you know, his timeline was replaced. So this time around, the Qunari have learned from their mistakes in the past. It's believed the Qunari have used the centuries to build a massive fleet of warships, as well as build up numbers and implant spies across Thedas. The Dragon's Breath plan wanted to use a dragon to stir things up even more. They also wanted to power up Cerebos by giving them Lyrium. This kind of reminds me of Cerberus experimenting with Rachni and expecting it to go well. Oh, and creating a human VI hybrid to control the Geth. Some evil geniuses can be really stupid. From a writer's perspective, I actually appreciate that about the Qunari. Anyway, giving Cerebos Lyrium, the Vitasala was specifically not supposed to do that. Her job was stopping magic. I get the idea in theory. Give Cerebos Lyrium, which obviously caused a lot of damage, and use them as tools of war against the South. In addition, they thought they could help strengthen the Veil. Where this goes wrong is assuming they could bring them back under control after the fact. However, I was watching a talk with some of the writers on Trespasser, and they talked about how their original idea was different than what we got in the finished product. They wanted a Deep Roads section where the Qunari were mining Lyrium. But the original idea they had for why they were mining Lyrium was so that they could make a Qunari version of Templars. Essentially, they would give the Qunari the same abilities Templars had to suppress and deny magic. Apparently, beta testers thought this was too confusing, but I say it's way better. It makes perfect sense. The Qunari failed the first time around mostly because of mages, so use the Templar abilities to counter that in the next invasion. Meanwhile, this meshes perfectly with what the Qunari were actually doing in Trespasser. Their whole thing was stopping magic. They were trying to strengthen the Veil, and we all know what the Qunari think of mages to begin with. Qunari Templars makes way more sense and fits better with the Qunari than giving Cerebos Lyrium. I sincerely hope this idea comes back in the next game, especially since they're specifically fighting Tevinter right now. Now, taking Tevinter will be no easy feat. There was one story where a single blood mage stopped a wave of Qunari dreadnoughts. I have to assume they sacrificed a lot of people to get that amount of power, but as shown in the Iron Bull's quest, a group of mages can take down a dreadnought if it's close enough to shore. Tevinter has some tricks up their sleeve, so don't count them out yet. Now there is one idea they haven't really alluded to, but I think could be really cool. See, they wanted the Alluvians so they could send troops all over Thedas quickly. They can't do that anymore, but there is a way they could get a similar result. The deep roads. The Iron Bull says they have dwarven ruins up on Parvalan, so they could conceivably fight through the Darkspawn to reach Thedas from below. The problem with this is obviously the fact that the Darkspawn have the numbers and strength to prevent this. The Qunari may use Gatlock, but using explosives underground is not smart. I don't know, it's just an idea I think could be cool. It could be another thing of the Qunari thinking they can handle something that they absolutely cannot. So I think that's about it. To recap, the Qunari are invading Tevinter and probably will move on to all of Thedas. But they share the same goal in stopping Fen'Harel. The question is whether you can trust them.
No.
They have made it abundantly clear. They will betray you the second they don't need you anymore. Please give us Qunari Templars because that sounds awesome. The Qunari have a history of doing really stupid things because they are too sure of themselves, trying to tame a dragon, giving Cerebos Lyrium, experimenting with red Lyrium, etc. Now this is certainly not a criticism. It's something I like about the Qunari. I am super excited to see where they take this plot in the future. It's going to be hard fighting against Sten, but I cannot trust his people. So that's it for now, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to comment and like, and remember, Tala Nadas.